My family forced me to take beatings for my siblings' crimes, calling it tradition. When I finally exposed my hero cop father, he manipulated the entire town into believing I was the villain. In my family, the youngest child took all the physical punishments for their siblings' mistakes. I spent ages 5 through 10 being struck for things I never did. You see, my father inherited this tradition from his military father, a decorated Vietnam veteran who ran his household like a boot camp. One person bears the burden so the unit stays strong, Dad would say, polishing his service medals every Sunday morning until they gleamed like fresh wounds. He genuinely believed he was creating unbreakable family bonds, molding us into a single organism that moved and breathed as one. My mother went along with it because she'd grown up in a similar household where the eldest daughter took everyone's beatings. It made us closer, she'd insist, her voice hollow as an empty church bell. We learned to protect each other. I had 3 older siblings, Marcus, Diana, and Gabriel. They were good kids once, but knowing I'd take their punishments transformed them into something else. Marcus started skipping school, then progressed to shoplifting. Diana would steal mom's jewelry and sell it for concert tickets. Gabriel would fail tests on purpose, drawing obscene pictures instead of answering questions. During family meetings, they'd look at me with that toxic mixture of guilt and relief swimming in their eyes as Dad reached for his belt, the leather cracking like a whip in the silent room. The rule was simple but savage. Every Sunday night at exactly 7 p.m., we had accountability hour. The living room furniture would be pushed against the walls, creating an arena. Dad would list that week's infractions while I stood in the center, barefoot on the cold hardwood floor, wearing only a thin tank top and shorts so the belt would teach its lesson properly. 1 strike for every missed curfew, 5 for every failed test, 10 for any disrespect. The beating continued until Dad felt family honor was restored, his face red with righteous fury, veins pulsing in his temple like worms under skin. My siblings had to watch. That was part of it, teaching them through my pain. They'd sit on the couch in age order, hands folded in their laps, eyes forward. Mom would count the strikes out loud to make sure Dad didn't go over the prescribed amount. 1 for Marcus's tardiness, 2, 3, 4 for Diana's backtalk, 5, 6. As if her arithmetic made it medicine instead of torture. By age 7, I developed a constant flinch, my body perpetually braced for impact. Teachers noticed, but Dad was a respected police officer with commendations covering his office wall. Who'd believe me? I kept a hidden calendar under my mattress, marking which sibling caused each scar with colored pencils. Red for Marcus, purple for Diana, green for Gabriel. My body became a map of their faults. Marcus's shoplifting phase left 3 parallel marks on my back that looked like claw marks. Diana's secret boyfriend cost me a split lip that took 2 weeks to heal. I told everyone I'd fallen off my bike. Gabriel's pranks meant I couldn't sit properly for a week, shifting constantly in my desk chair while classmates snickered. The breaking point came on my 10th birthday, February 15th, a day that should have meant cake and presents. Instead, Gabriel had spray-painted obscenities on the principal's car in broad daylight, laughing as security cameras captured everything. That night, as Dad unbuckled his belt with practiced efficiency, Gabriel actually laughed. "At least I don't have to deal with this," he said, lounging on the couch like he was watching Netflix instead of his baby sister's torture. I looked at my siblings. Not one of them would meet my eyes. Marcus studied his phone. Diana examined her nails. That's when I realized they'd stopped seeing me as their sister. I was just their punishment proxy, a thing that absorbed pain so they could live freely. That night, I did something I'd never done before. When Dad raised his belt, the buckle glinting under the ceiling light, I ran. My bare feet slapped against the floor as I burst through the front door and into the February cold. I ran 3 blocks to my teacher Mrs. Lee's house, my lungs burning, wearing nothing but my punishment clothes. She opened the door to find me shivering on her porch, fresh welts rising on my arms. Without a word, she pulled me inside, wrapped me in a blanket that smelled like lavender, and made me hot chocolate while I showed her the fresh wounds and old scars. She photographed everything with clinical precision. When I told her everything, the years of abuse, the proxy system, my father's twisted concept of family honor, she called CPS immediately, but she was smart enough to know the system. "We need more than your word against a cop," she said, her kind eyes hard with determination. "We need evidence they can't ignore or explain away." So we got creative. Mrs. Lee gave me a tiny voice recorder, no bigger than a USB drive, to hide in my sock. For 3 weeks, I became a spy in my own home. I documented everything. Dad's rants about family honor and military discipline. Mom counting strikes out loud like some sick lullaby. My siblings discussing whose turn it was to mess up next. I even recorded Gabriel asking Marcus, "Think she'll cry this time?" She didn't last week. Maybe Dad's going soft. But when CPS showed up, Dad was ready. He pulled out documents showing my recent psychological evaluation, scheduled just 2 weeks prior. The timing wasn't coincidental. Dad had been preparing for this moment, building his case methodically. The CPS worker, a tired-looking woman named Catherine, accepted the paperwork with practiced neutrality. Her eyes scanned the pages while Dad launched into his performance. His voice cracked at just the right moments as he described my troubling behavior patterns and attention-seeking tendencies. He mentioned the goldfish incident from 3 years ago, how I'd supposedly overreacted to its death. Mom nodded along, adding details about my dramatic episodes whenever Dad paused for effect. They'd rehearsed this routine, I realized. Every gesture calculated, every word chosen for maximum impact. Catherine asked to speak with me privately. Dad's hand moved to his service weapon, a subtle reminder of his authority. He insisted on staying, citing safety concerns. His fingers drummed against the holster, while explaining how I'd become increasingly aggressive toward my siblings. The lies flowed smoothly, each one building on the last until they formed an impenetrable wall. Marcus walked through the door right then, holding college housing forms that needed Dad's signature. His eyes found mine across the room, and for a moment, I saw something flicker there. Doubt, guilt, but then Dad called him over, asking him to share his concerns about my behavior. Marcus glanced at the forms in his hand, his college dreams hanging in the balance. His testimony came out stilted but damaging. He described my mood swings and false accusations while carefully avoiding my gaze. The fresh welts on my back throbbed beneath my shirt. I could show them, end this charade immediately. But Dad's eyes promised consequences, not just for me, but for Marcus too. His scholarship, his future, everything hung on this moment. I kept my mouth shut, letting the evidence stay hidden while Dad spun his web of deception. Catherine took notes, her pen scratching across the paper as Dad served coffee and played the concerned father. He even pulled out photo albums, showing happier times when his system of control hadn't yet broken us completely. The doorbell rang, Mrs. Lee's distinctive pattern, but Mom intercepted it. Her phone buzzed with a supposed emergency about Diana at school, another orchestrated distraction. Gabriel arrived home to find the living room transformed into Dad's stage. Without prompting, he backed up every lie, adding his own embellishments about my jealousy and need for attention. The recorder in my sock felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Evidence of their conspiracy sat in my bedroom, just up the stairs, but leaving now would look like running away, like guilt. Catherine observed my flinching flinching when Dad moved too quickly, but she interpreted it wrong. She saw mental instability where abuse existed. Her camera came out, documenting my concerning behavior for her report. Each photo would support Dad's narrative of a troubled child rather than an abused one. The system designed to protect me was being weaponized against me. School became another battlefield. My counselor, Mrs. Rodriguez, suddenly grew distant after Dad offered to write her husband a glowing recommendation for the police academy. Her previous concern evaporated, replaced by suggestions that I should focus on my studies rather than creating drama. The assistant principal started documenting my disruptions, though I'd done nothing different than before. Mom's campaign expanded beyond our house. She told concerned neighbors about my supposed phases, comparing this to when our goldfish died. Mrs. Patterson from next door stopped making eye contact during her morning walks. The grocery store clerk who'd always been friendly now hurried through our transactions. Our family's crisis had become town gossip, with me painted as the problem child terrorizing a devoted police family. The family group chat became evidence against me. My siblings screenshotted messages where I'd expressed frustration, removing context to make me seem unstable. A text saying, "I can't take this anymore" after a beating became proof of my mental health crisis. Diana posted about our family drama on her Finsta, carefully documenting my episodes for months without my knowledge. Mrs. Lee's after-school check-ins drew unwanted attention. An anonymous complaint reached the principal about her inappropriate interest in a student. She faced questions about professional boundaries while Dad played the concerned parent worried about outside influences on his troubled child. The one adult who believed me was being systematically discredited. Dad's control extended to every aspect of my life. He scheduled me for psychological evaluation with Dr. Hartman, his poker buddy. The appointment card stuck to our fridge with a magnet, a daily reminder of his power. Insurance forms required his signature. School permissions needed his approval. Every system meant to help children had a backdoor for a respected cop to walk through. Exhaustion became my constant companion. I dozed off in history class, jerking awake to find Mr. Chen documenting the incident. Potential substance abuse appeared in my permanent record. Another brick in the wall Dad was building around me. My grades slipped as I spent more energy surviving than studying, which only reinforced the narrative of a troubled child spiraling out of control. Uncle Tony had offered refuge once. He'd pulled me aside at Christmas, saying his door was always open if I needed somewhere safe. But when I called, his voice came through strained and apologetic. Dad had mentioned Tony's expired green card during a friendly conversation. The threat was clear. Help me and face deportation. Tony had his own family to protect. Another ally lost to Dad's strategic pressure. The town turned against me in small ways. Whispers followed me through the cereal aisle at Kroger. Parents pulled their children closer when I passed. The narrative had taken hold. Unstable child of a hero cop, making wild accusations for attention. Even kids at school started repeating things they'd overheard at dinner tables. My mom says she's going through something, became the polite way of dismissing my reality. Dad's lies grew more sophisticated. He claimed I'd been out past curfew the night before, but Gabriel's Instagram story from that exact time showed Dad at home, contradicting his timeline. Small victories felt hollow when the larger war was being lost. Proving one lie just made me look manipulative, like I was keeping track of details to craft my own false narrative. My best friend Emma's mom needed Dad's help getting a restraining order against her ex-husband. Suddenly, Emma wasn't allowed to hang out anymore. Her apologetic texts came less frequently until they stopped altogether. Another connection severed. Another witness silenced through strategic favors and implied threats. The truth became a liability. When I proved Dad had lied about one detail, it revealed I'd snuck out 3 months earlier to avoid a beating. My credibility crumbled as Dad reframed every escape attempt as delinquency. Mrs. Lee's celebration hug after getting the court date postponed was photographed by someone and submitted as evidence of inappropriate boundaries between teacher and student. Dinner became a performance. Dad would grip my shoulder while talking about getting through this together as a family, his fingers finding the exact spots that hurt most. His words sounded supportive to anyone listening, but the bruises they left told the real story. Mom would serve my favorite foods while discussing treatment options for my behavioral issues, as if pasta could fix what they'd broken. The recorder captured it all, but retrieving it meant risking everything. Dad had started checking my room randomly, claiming concern about self-harm materials or substance paraphernalia. The evidence that could save me sat in a shoebox beneath old drawings, close enough to touch but too dangerous to reach. Each day that passed made the recordings more valuable and more impossible to access. Catherine's report would come soon. The CPS worker had left with pages of notes supporting Dad's version of events, photos of my flinching, testimony from my siblings, school records showing declining grades and that one dozed-off incident, a paper trail of a troubled child acting out rather than a desperate kid trying to survive. The system had been turned inside out, protecting the abuser while preparing to further punish the victim. Mrs. Lee faced her own battles. The administration questioned her judgment, her professionalism, her motives. She couldn't contact me directly anymore. All communication filtered through official channels that Dad could monitor. The woman who'd wrapped me in a lavender-scented blanket that cold February night was being pushed out of my life by the very system she'd tried to use to save me. My siblings avoided me at home, guilty consciences making them cruel. Marcus buried himself in college prep. Diana spent more time with friends. Gabriel treated the whole situation like a joke, making comments about crazy little sisters when his friends visited. They'd chosen their side, and it wasn't mine. The family unit Dad claimed to be protecting had shattered, held together only by shared complicity in my abuse. The town had made its judgment. The respected cop with commendations covering his wall couldn't possibly be what I claimed. His troubled youngest child, however, fit perfectly into a narrative they could understand. Mental health issues, attention-seeking behavior, false accusations born from jealousy or delusion. The truth was too uncomfortable, so they chose the comfortable lie. Each day brought new indignities, new proofs of my supposed instability. Each night brought the knowledge that evidence of the truth sat just upstairs, in a shoebox I couldn't safely reach. The recorder held their voices, their admissions, their casual cruelty. But getting it meant risking everything, and Dad's random room searches had increased. He was suspicious, careful, always one step ahead. The walls closed in steadily. Support systems crumbled. Allies disappeared. The narrative solidified around me like concrete, trapping me in a story where I was the villain in my own abuse. Dad's system had evolved from physical control to something far more sophisticated. He'd turned the entire town into his accomplices, made them willing participants in silencing his victim. Dad's basketball coaching started the following week. Gabriel's team practiced in the school gym every Tuesday and Thursday, and Dad arrived with his whistle and clipboard like he'd been doing it for years. I watched from the bleachers as he demonstrated proper shooting form, his movements fluid and confident. The kids gravitated toward him immediately, drawn by his easy charm and genuine enthusiasm. He learned their names within minutes, remembered their favorite NBA players, even quoted lines from Space Jam when they made good plays. My favorite movie, the one we used to watch together on lazy Saturday afternoons, afternoons before everything went wrong. The irony burned like acid in my throat. Here was the man who'd turned family into warfare, teaching teamwork and sportsmanship to 12-year-olds. He high-fived them after successful drills, offered encouragement when they struggled, never once raising his voice in anger. The other parents beamed from the sidelines, thrilled that Officer Thompson had volunteered his time. They had no idea that same hand delivering praise had delivered pain just days before. Gabriel thrived under Dad's coaching, his natural athleticism finally given proper direction. He started making more shots, passing better, even helping younger players with their form. Dad would ruffle his hair after good plays, the gesture so normal and fatherly that my stomach churned. The team started winning games they'd previously lost, and Dad became the hero of the basketball parents group chat. I tried explaining the situation to my English teacher, Mr. Robbie, during lunch one day. He listened patiently as I described the punishment system, the beatings, the way Dad had manipulated Catherine's visit. But when I mentioned Dad was coaching Gabriel's team, Mr. Robbie's expression shifted. The father has some skills at playing different roles, the supportive coach with the basketball team while being the abuser at home. It's interesting how Mr. Robbie's expression changes when he learns about the coaching. That small moment shows how the father's good deeds create doubt about the OP's story. His son played on that team too, loved Coach Thompson's practices. The conversation ended with Mr. Robbie suggesting I speak with the school counselor about my family adjustment issues. Dad's influence spread through the school like spilled ink. He volunteered for career day, showing up in full uniform to talk about community service. He joined the PTA safety committee, offering professional insights about protecting children. He even started a youth mentorship program at the station, focusing on at-risk kids who needed positive role models. Every good deed built his reputation higher, while making my accusations seem more delusional. The psychological evaluation with Dr. Hartman took place in a beige office that smelled like leather and disappointment. Dad had prepped me beforehand, his hand heavy on my shoulder as he explained the importance of being honest about my struggles. Dr. Hartman asked about my sleep patterns, my appetite, my relationships with family members. I tried steering the conversation toward the abuse, but he kept redirecting to my emotional responses, my coping mechanisms, my tendency to externalize blame. He showed me ink blots that looked like nothing but spilled paint, asked me to draw pictures of my family, had me complete questionnaires about my mood. When I mentioned the beatings, he nodded sympathetically and asked how that made me feel, never once questioning whether they'd actually happened. The session ended with him prescribing mild anxiety medication and recommending family therapy. Dad thanked him profusely, playing the concerned father perfectly. Mom's password proved easier to remember than I'd expected. Her fingers had traced out our old dog's name followed by Diana's birthday, a combination she'd probably used for years. I waited until everyone was asleep before creeping to the family computer, my heart hammering against my ribs. The browser history revealed her recent searches, and what I found made my blood run cold. Troubled teen camps in Utah, wilderness therapy programs, residential treatment facilities. She'd been researching places to send me. I ordered a book about surviving child abuse, using Mom's saved credit card information and having it shipped to school instead of home. The confirmation email went to her account, but I deleted it immediately, hoping she wouldn't notice the charge among all the others. The book arrived 3 days later, hidden inside a manila envelope. I read it during study hall, learning about trauma responses, gaslighting, documentation strategies. Knowledge became my armor against their manipulation. Diana's Finsta account shocked me when I finally found it. She'd been documenting our family drama for months, posting videos and photos with captions that painted me as an unstable attention seeker. There were clips of me flinching at sudden movements, labeled as dramatic overreactions, screenshots of our text conversations, edited to remove context, even a video of me crying after a particularly bad beating, captioned with eye roll emojis and comments about teenage hormones. Her followers, mostly kids from school, left comments agreeing with her assessment. They called me crazy, suggested I needed help, shared their own stories about difficult siblings. Diana had turned my trauma into entertainment, gathering social media sympathy while I gathered bruises. The betrayal cut deeper than any belt ever could. My attempt to record Dad using Mrs. Lee's old phone nearly ended in disaster. I'd hidden it in my backpack, activated the voice recorder during